Hey guys, my name is Brittany, and I'm so excited to finally be starting to make these videos for you. Ever since I was really little, I've loved the paranormal and mythology. I would sit and research it for hours on end, and I still do. So I just kind of want to spread that knowledge with you and share my personal experiences with it as well, which over the course of these videos, I am so excited to do. And if that's something that interests you, then just hit that subscribe button because I will be posting at least once a week. Probably more than that, so just make sure that you click that. So anyways, today we're going to be talking about mermaids. So everybody knows what a mermaid is. It's this beautiful maiden that has an upper half of a woman and a lower half of a fish. Now, mermaids have been talked about for an incredible length of time, and they've been in so many things, from Harry Potter to The Little Mermaid, Peter Pan, you name it. And another source that mermaids play a huge part in is the Arabian Nights. So in the Arabian Nights, these mermaids are described as having moon faces, hair like a woman's, but their hands and their feet are actually inside of their bodies. So essentially, if you picture that, it'd be like having the upper half of a woman but with no hands, because it just goes right into the tail. And then Greek mythology also contains things of mermaids, like the god Triton. So mermen aren't exactly something that's talked about a lot, but Triton is a very known god, and he is actually the messenger of the sea. So on the other hand, Poseidon, he's also, in some versions and depictions of him, is also depicted as a merman. But then there's also several modern religions that still celebrate mermaid goddesses to this day. And those include Hinduism, Candomblé, and many other ones that actually believe in these mermaid goddesses. And Scotland is also very big as far as mythology creatures go. So there's tons of legends that in Scotland and Wales that mermaids actually befriended and sometimes even married humans. And if you think about it, you kind of start to wonder, did these humans know that this person was a mermaid beforehand or after? And it's kind of remarkable if you think about maybe they knew before and they didn't look at this being as anything different than us. I mean, I'm sure in often cases they did, but we'd hope that there's some cases where they don't. And in the Shetland Islands, and I'm so sorry if I pronounce anything wrong, I don't mean to offend anybody, but in the Shetland Islands, they describe mermaids as these stunningly beautiful maidens who live under the sea. So the classic idea of a mermaid. But they believe that their hybrid appearance is only temporary, and they achieve it by actually donating the skin off a fish. And if they happen to lose that skin, then they can't return to their home. They can't return to the sea. So it's very important that they do not lose that. And also, mermaids are also often associated with misfortune and death. So that comes from, being a common cause of shipwrecks or storms and things like that. But they're often confused with sirens, which are very different. And I'll touch a little bit on sirens a little bit later in this video. And then I do want to talk a little bit more about mermen. So mermaid and mermaids are very similar, except mermen are more like a man. So their upper half is the human form of a man with a tail like a fish. So you don't really hear a lot about mermen, but they have a lot of the same qualities and powers and strength as a mermaid does. So they can summon storms, they often like cause shipwrecks, they have like a very fierce reputation of drowning sailors, but you don't really see them as much popping up in things. So like there's not as many like sightings of them, there's not as many stories of them, and you kind of wonder if that's because they're like a little bit more of like a lone wolf, or if they're just really shy, or if, you know, they are not seen as something that's as attractive or something, so it's not something that people really take the time to view, which sounds awful, but I want to know what you guys think. Like, why do you think that mermen are not as talked about as mermaids? And another interesting thing is the blue men of the Minch. So they're said to dwell in the Outer Hebrides off the coast of Scotland. So again, Scotland is very widely known for their mythological creatures. So in these videos, probably talk about Scotland a lot. But these blue men actually look like ordinary men, just like mermen, except for a couple slight differences. Their skin is actually tinted blue. They're often said to have gray beards, and their bottom half is the tail of a fish. So in the Bloomin lore, they often challenge the captain of the ships to a rhyming game. And if that captain is quick enough of wit and agile enough of tongue, they can actually best the blue men and save their ship and their crew from a watery grave, which is pretty outstanding that there is a known way to actually best these blue men. I mean, I'm decent at rhyming, but if it were riddles, I probably wouldn't do the best with that. So, because I think too much about it and then I don't get it. So, but it is very cool that there is an actual known way to best these blue men and actually save the ship. So then on another hand, there is, sorry, my hair is really short, so it's like falling out of my ponytail. In Japanese legends, they also have a version of merfolk called Kappa. So Kappa is it's a child-sized water spirit, and it's actually more animal than it is human. So these Kappas actually have a liking to children, but not in the sense, like not in the positive sense. They actually like to devour children, which is awful. And they also have a liking towards people that wander off into secluded areas by themselves. So, you're in Japan, make sure not to do that. So, like the blue men, these Kappa like to play games, which they're these like childlike creatures, and that's very similar to children in our species because they like to play games. Like most people like to play games. So these Kappa like to play games with humans, and they like to challenge them with games of skill. So if the human can win the game, they can go free. But if they lose, the penalty is often death. So just make sure not to lose if you're ever in that scenario. The other interesting thing about Kappa is they often prize fresh cucumbers, which is like, that doesn't really make as much sense because of, like, personally to me, just because, you know, they like to eat people, so that's very different. But they're very interesting. And then there's also a few different stories about encounters with mermaids. So one story dating back to the 1600s claims that a mermaid had entered Holland through a dike, and the mermaid got injured in the process. So the people that found her actually nursed her back to health in a lake. And then she actually became a productive citizen, learning to speak Dutch, perform household chores, and eventually converted to being a Catholic. So that's kind of interesting because the mermaid actually chose to stay on land. She didn't choose to go back to the sea. And you kind of wonder why that is. Like, you wonder if it's because she was so interested and thankful to the humans for helping her that she felt like she was at home. There's another legend of a mermaid in Edward Snow's Incredible Mysteries and Legends of the Sea. So a sea captain off the coast of Newfoundland described his 1614 encounter. Now this sea captain is actually quite famous because he's Captain John Smith of the Pocahontas tale. So Captain John Smith saw a mermaid swimming about with all possible grace. He pictured her as having large eyes, a finely shaped nose that was a little too short, ears that were slightly too big, and says that her long green hair imparted from her scalp made her look very original. But she was by no means unattractive to him. And as he was viewing her, he actually started experiencing the first effects of love. Now, to his disappointment, as he was continuing to view this mermaid, he realizes that her bottom half is a fish. And then there's another legend that takes place in Japan. And it's actually in Fuakwa. I may have pronounced it wrong. Again, I am so sorry if I did. But it is actually said to house the remains of a mermaid that washed ashore in 1222. Now, its bones have been preserved by the behest of a priest who actually believed the creature had come from a dragon god. And for nearly 800 years, these bones have been preserved. And it has been legend that the water that is preserving these bones actually helps prevent diseases. However, only a few of the bones remain, and they've never been tested. So, who's to say that, they're not mermaids? And who's to say they are? Because we don't know, but it'd be pretty cool if they were. So I kind of want to hear your guys' opinion on that. Like, do you think that they could be mermaids? Because most of the sea isn't explored. So who's to say that these creatures don't exist? Like, who's to say that, sea monsters and, like, all of these things, they don't exist? And if you don't believe in them, that's cool. So some of the mermaid's powers are actually immortality, seeing the future, telepathy, and hypnosis. So they're very known mermaid powers. However, it's very interesting because some legends explain mermaids as being immortal. However, other legends actually claim that they're immortal, but they have very long lives and no souls. So it kind of goes both ways, which we don't really know which one is true. I've read many accounts of both, so they both could be true. The modern day view of mermaids often get mixed with sirens. So sirens and mermaids are very alike, but very different. So sirens sometimes get depicted like a mermaid. And they do have some of the same powers, like summoning storms. They're often both known to sing to sailors and cause shipwrecks. However, sirens are they're carnivorous creatures. Like, their main goal, maybe not their main goal, but they feed on humans. And I'm sure many other things, like fish and whatnot. But they will sing to the human to get them to crash the ship. And Sirens are also described as being much more aggressive than mermaids. Also, sometimes they're actually often more described this way, but as like a bird-like creature with a human head. So they're like, picture like a vulture with a woman's head. And these sirens actually, when they sing, they take on the look of something you love or lust. So the only sure way of not getting entrapped, I guess, by a siren is don't listen, which is easier said than done because they're supposed to have these beautiful singing voices. However, this is more about mermaids. I just wanted to quickly touch on a little bit of the difference of them, with, sirens being much more aggressive. And later on, I will do an actual video of just sirens. So, again, many folktales also record marriages between mermaids and humans. So, it's very common that men will actually steal something that is very important to the mermaid. So like a comb or a shell, a mirror, just something that holds value, and hides it. So then the mermaid has to live with him on land. Now, if the object stays hidden, the mermaid has to stay. However, if she finds it, she may return to the sea. And that's not always the case. Sometimes there's mutual agreements. Sometimes, it's true love. Like, there's so many different things. If it is a mutual agreement, then the mermaid stays as long as that agreement is not broken. And although mermaids are known to be friendly, they're also known to be very mean to humans. And same with mermen. Their gifts often brought misfortune, and if offended, they have been known to cause storms and other disasters. To see one was often voyage of a shipwreck. Like, it was a very bad omen. Or to see one on a voyage was also a bad omen of a shipwreck. I'm so sorry. Because that being said, it's because they often lured sailors to their death. And, like, obviously, not in all cases. There are positive cases of mermaids, but it is very common that this were to happen. And I'm actually going to read to you one last story of a sighting of a mermaid. So this story takes place in 1797 by a guy named William Monroe. So he was a school teacher in Scotland. So William Monroe writes a letter to a Dr. Torrance in Glasgow, and this letter is actually published in the Times of London on September 8th, 1809. There we go. So, Monroe writes, about 12 years ago when I was a schoolmaster at Ray, in the course of my walking on the shore of Sandside Bay, being a fine warm day in summer, I was induced to extend my walk towards Sandside Head, when my attention was arrested by the appearance of a figure resembling an unclothed human female, sitting upon a rock, combing its hair, which flowed around its shoulders and of a light brown color. The resemblance which the figure bore to its prototype in all visible parts was so striking that had not the rock on which it had been sitting on been dangerous for bathing, I would have been constrained to have regarded it as really in human form, and to an eye unaccustomed to the situation, it must have undoubtedly appeared as such. The head was covered with the hair of the color above mentioned and shaded on the crown, the forehead round, the face plump, the cheeks ruddy, the eyes blue, the mouth and lips of a natural form resembling those of a man. The teeth I could not discover, as the mouth was shut. The breast and abdomen, the arms and fingers of the size in which the hands were employed, did not appear to be webbed, but of this I am not positive. It remained on the rock 3 or 4 minutes after I observed it, and was exercised during that period in combing its hair, which was long and thick, and of which it appeared proud, and then dropped into the sea, which was level with the abdomen. From whence it did not reappear to me. I had a distinct view of its features, being at no great distance on an eminence, above the rock on which it was sitting, and the sun brightly shining. He continues. Immediately, before its getting into its natural habitat, it seemed to have observed me. As the eyes were directed towards the eminence on which I stood, it may be necessary to remark that previous to the period I beheld the object, I had heard it frequently reported by several persons, and some of them person whose veracity I never heard disputed, that they had such a phenomenon as I had described, though then, like many others, I was not disposed to credit their testimony on the subject. I can say of truth that it was only by seeing the phenomenon I was perfectly convinced of its existence. If the above narrative can in any degree be subservient towards establishing the existence of a phenomenon, hitherto almost incredible to naturalists, or to remove the skepticism of others who are ready to dispute everything which they cannot fully comprehend, you are welcome to it. From, dear sir, your most obliged and most humble servant, William Monroe. Now, so William Monroe, he views this maiden bathing on this rock that isn't safe to be bathing on, and he almost completely disregards her. But then he notices the rock and notices that that's not normal, that's not natural. So he actually starts taking everything in and realizes that she is a mermaid. And he is at such disbelief, he just stares at her. So this seems like, like obviously I don't personally know William Monroe, and way before I was born. So I can't say like, okay, this is 100% true. But I mean, personally, I do believe in mermaids. I believe that anything is possible. I don't need to see something with my own eyes to believe it. If you are the type of person, that is completely fine. But it is just very interesting to me. Like, do you think that maybe mermaids, we don't see them a lot because they live in a part of the sea that's so unexplored? Or, there is the possibility that they don't exist. And there's also the possibility that maybe they live in a dimension that coincides with our own. There's so many different possibilities to this. I want to hear what you guys think. I want to know if there's anything that you would like me to research on. And I want to hear your personal stories too, if you experienced anything paranormal. Again, further along in these videos, I will share all of my personal experiences a little bit at a time. I've had crazy ones, some that are absolutely great, and I'm so lucky to have experienced. And then there's other ones that are, like straight out of a horror film. So if you are interested, just make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. And I hope to talk to you guys next time.